Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Story number 1, Spirit of Battle, written by Knockham Davis. The spirit wondered, for it could not rest. The memory of life had long since faded. All it remembered was being barely able to stand, yet still fighting on. For behind it was a house with children, and the villagers that were too old or sick to fight. The spirit had died that day, defending its home, but that day had long since passed. It roamed the land, long since changed, fighting on. So long as someone was fighting to protect others, it would help them. After all, that's what it had done in life. It was the human thing to do. It remembered every battle after that. The young soldier had fallen, dying a fatal wound, yet he stood as energy flowed through him. The spirit had entered his body and wouldn't let him die, just yet. The young man fought on, holding off the enemy until there was no more energy, and the spirit had to leave. There were more like him, and more than one survivor of the battle told of the warriors that refused to die. But the enemy fleeing, the spirit moved on. Great beasts of steel and fire churned up the land as they fought, with long tubes of smoke and thunder. Though they weren't alive, the spirit found that it could possess them just the same. The men inside were still alive, but frightened against the onslaught of more powerful beasts. But the morale soared as their beast moved faster, their shots hit harder, and they flew with more accuracy. Enemies could not puncture the belly of the beast. As the battle ended, the defenders victorious, the spirit moved on. As time passed, the fighting grew worse, more chaotic. People found more deadly ways of killing each other, and the spirit had been involved in all of them. Wherever someone fought to defend another, they found themselves bolstered, a ship of war burning, yet somehow staying afloat to fight. Aircraft with torn wings and engines faltering, yet still making it to safety. Men and women firing weapons that caused instant death when hit. But then, things changed. The living fought less and less. Talking seemed to be the norm. The spirit tried to help in battles of words and battles of medicine, but it knew nothing of these ways. So it stayed behind, in the shadows. Though there was sporadic fighting, it never lasted long enough for the spirit to be needed. And then, mankind spread to the heavens. Great craft of metal made their way into the stars and spread out. More talking, less fighting. Mankind had apparently discovered peace. The spirit thought that it could not rest, and without fighting it could not help but glad. After all, it had been human once. It still considered itself human. Mankind crafted their own spirits, though none of them for battle, spirits of medicine, of engineering, of education, though they were all created. Unlike the spirit itself, the spirit was fine with this, preferring to wander its homeland. And for a millennia, the spirit was content. Until they came. It knew not of who the enemy was, but dark ships came from the heavens and attacked the place the spirit called home, attacked mankind across the land, and the spirits heard the call and once again rose to the challenge. Great ships of weapons, not unlike the ancient steel beasts of the land and steel beasts of the water, filled the skies as the spirits would move from one to another. As mankind fought, one. It was a losing battle, but the will of mankind did not waver, and so neither did the spirit. As time went on and mankind dwindled, they finally built the spirit of battle and put it in one last ship with the best weapons and defenses. This was where the spirit ended up. This was where it chose to stay. The man-made spirit was intelligent, but only because of programming. There, the spirit learned how to fix the ship, how to use the ship properly, learned that humanity was dying. The invaders had killed too many for the human race to continue. The spirit was undeterred, for it felt energized. Its power flowed through the ship as if the ship were its body and it were the soul. The spirit, the ship, they had a mission, one they had accepted so many millennia ago. Protect this home. While the Zealot were masters of conquest and had control over a quarter of the entire galaxy, but they had met their match. Scores of warships, myriads of legions, they'd all failed. A single planet in the backwater of the galaxy was resisting. The native fauna, a race once called itself humans, had long since gone extinct. The Zealot had only taken a century to destroy their small interstellar republic, driving them back to their homeworld. Human AI had never been that great, and by the time the Zealot had encountered them, they'd forgotten the ways of war. But they remembered quickly. It had been humanity that started the war, refusing to bend the knee to the Zealot and become slaves. They'd fought to free them, to protect the people of Zealot would kill, and for that they had paid the ultimate price. But in the end, the humans had won. Zealot intelligence knew that the humans were dead, but they left a final parting gift, a massive war machine, the largest and most powerful ship humanity had ever built. They named it In Memoriam and parked it in orbit with a single directive: continue the fight. Scores of refugees had flocked to the world to hide beneath the protection of the human ship. It had no crew and should have lost all power, as no one could power something like that for that long. By human standards, the ship was well over 3,000 years old, but it still fought on. The Zealot had expended so many formations against it that their position had weakened, and the Grand Alliance was poised to wipe them from the face of the galaxy. But even the Grand Alliance knew better than to travel to Earth. They tried once, sending an envoy, but In Memoriam had detected the weapons and fired, ignoring all messages. Earth was deemed haunted, protected by a ghost of power and steel. And only the innocent, the denizens of the galaxy that needed protection, that needed hope, were allowed to set foot on the planet. Humanity may have gone extinct, but a piece of them remained to carry on their fight. And as long as there were people that needed help, that needed safety, Earth was there with a great spirit of battle to watch over them. End of story. Story number 2. Random Funny Story, written by John Falkirk. The Wizard. Now we all know that humans are somewhat unique, in that to date, they are the only sapient species with no ability to utilize the fundamental force of magic. The assorted species of the galaxy had still welcomed them into the community in 2239, though, as their technical aptness seemed to more than make up for their magical ineptness. They did end up being the butts of many jokes, however, many of which I told over and over. That is, until I met Timothy. I was a graduate student at Core Academy, a prestigious magical institution, as you are no doubt aware. As part of a master's program in pyromancy, I was obliged to serve as a TA in a number of classes. I just finished a lecture, which I had to give due to the Professor Umbertovuscus' unplanned absence thanks to a nasty case of the flu. The class itself was a freshman interspecies mystical relations class, IMYR 104. The subject of the day's lecture had indeed been humans, namely how, due to their lack of magical aptitude, they were effectively deaf, dumb, and blind, in comparison to a graduate wizard. I just concluded the lecture itself when a loud cough came from the back of the lecture hall. A human, wearing a ridiculous pointy hat, stood there. "Now that's not very nice," he said. Now seeing the human at Core Academy was unusual. They were not in any way barred from enrolling. But as the Academy itself offers degrees only in the various magical fields, there was no point to a human becoming a student there. They were biologically incapable of learning what we had to teach. But there was the student, this human student, with a completed late enrollment form saying that he was supposed to be taking IMYR 104. I asked his name, and he said that some dared to call him Tim, or some nonsense such as that. I, in some degrees of annoyance, and perhaps, if I'm honest, a bit of arrogance, asked why in the Void's name he wanted to study magic, when we all knew that he couldn't use it. He smirked and replied that contrary to expectations, he was, in fact, an accomplished wizard. I laughed, as did most of the class. In response, he invited us all to follow him, and he would prove it. He led us to the freshman mystical exercise room, where a number of bearing-bound target machines sat. BBT machines are essential for basic magical practice. The combination of physical interface, in the form of rapid-moving paddles controlled by buttons, targets to aim for a long slope, and an iron bearing to attempt to manipulate, with budding magical talents forms a key exercise for young mages in training. Also, they are rather entertaining, and beating existing scores on the machines is a point of pride from many aspiring and accomplished mages alike. Tim pointed them out and said that he could chance anyone here on one of these machines. We all laughed and challenged him to prove it. What we witnessed could best be described as a work of art. He walked up to the first BBT and inserted 2 tokens. He stood like a statue, like he was part of the machine. It was as if he felt each bumper. Every play was clean. He played by pure intuition. We watched every target fall. The deaf, dumb, and blind human sure played one mean ball. Our mandibles dropped. With a single of his 3 plays, he'd already beaten the top score on the machine, which had been set by General Durinkrini Sismian, PhD, near the head of the military magic department. But the human wasn't done. He played like there was no distractions. He ignored the buzzers and the bells, the lights, nor the spells could flash at him. I swear that he could play by sense of smell. Every ball earned him a replay, and not once did he see him fall. The deaf, dumb, and blind human played one hell of a mean game of ball. He didn't stop with the machine. He went on to trance, often by an order of magnitude, the high scores of every machine, including my favorite one, which I proudly held the high score on since my junior year. When he finally finished, I asked him how, without magic, as all of us were more than capable of seeing, if not believing, that he had not used any. He managed to pull off such an impressive scores. He replied, "These BBT machines exist on Earth too. We call them pinball machines. And as I said, I am a wizard. A pinball wizard." And I had to agree that supposedly deaf, dumb, and blind human sure plays a mean pinball. End of story. I just quickly want to thank the Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Alithia Barkey, Cam Maxwell, Caspar Arnholtz, Albarden Guster, Arcadian, Lord Azrakal, and Joachim Backer.